Okay, good morning, everybody. May I welcome you all to the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee. I'm Eric Kerry, Councillor. I'm the chairman of this committee. May I remind members, I've just had indication that the meeting is being broadcast live. And may I ask you also to use your microphones when speaking so you can be heard on the broadcast. I won't go through the thing about public here, but just remind everybody, if you've got any mobile phones or electronic devices, can you please switch them to silent? Okay, we start off with item number 1, which is the minutes of the last meeting from November the 14th on page 5. Can I ask if we can approve those minutes, please? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item number 2, apologies for absence. May I ask Mr. Monaghan to confirm any apologies and substitutions, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Jim Creamer is substituting for Councillor John Clark, who sends apologies under the category of other reasons. Councillor Nigel Moxon is substituting for Councillor Roger Jackson, who sends apologies under the category of medical reasons. Councillor Chris Barnfather is substituting for Councillor Richard Butler, who sends apologies under the category of other county council business. Councillor Errol Henry is substituting for Councillor Sheila Place, who sends apologies under the category of other reasons. And Chris King, Yvonne Davidson and Councillor Graham Chapman from Nottingham City Council also send their apologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have any other apologies? I see none. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item number 3, which is declarations of interest by members and officers. Does any councillor or officer have any interest in any matter on the agenda they need to disclose? And if you do, can you please state the type of interest you have and give brief details, please? Yes, okay, Everton. Can you press your microphone and speak, please? Thank you. There you go, yeah.
I move that I have been told by Government Practice Services, because I work in pensions, so when you're discussing it, they're expecting me to leave the room.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair, if I just jump in there. Yeah, so it was items 4 and 11 on the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Garner.
Well, it's just an apology. I'll have to leave at 12 o'clock.
No problem.
So I just thought to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you very much for letting us know. Okay, moving on to item number 4, which is the Local Government Pension Scheme Administration Performance Report. Before I go on to Sarah Stevenson to introduce the report, I'd like to move the recommendation, which is on page 24 of the agenda pack, please.
I'll second that, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sunnington. Okay, Sarah, can you take us through the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So this admin performance report covers the period from the 1st of April 23 through to the 31st of March 24. Another busy year for the pensions administration team. As well as business as usual processing of retirements, deaths, starters and leavers, the team continues to work on national projects. The MacLeod Court of Appeal judgment is proving to be very challenging in many ways. There's been a huge amount of additional data collection required, systems updates, and we are yet to start actually the implementation of the MacLeod remedy. We have had to do some cases where we have manually done some calculations, and I think it's fair to say from an LGPS perspective, the MacLeod judgment does not bear significant increase for LGPS members. To date, those increases have ranged from 79p per annum through to £10 per annum. However, if we were running both fire and police schemes, then these schemes are seeing significant increases to members' pensions. The National Pension Dashboard project continues to gain momentum, and all LGPS funds are required to connect to the pension dashboard ecosystem by the 31st of March 2025. Recruitment continues to be challenging for all LGPS funds. However, the Knots Fund has taken an approach to grow our own. And at the beginning of January, we employed 4 apprentices on an 18-month apprenticeship programme. These individuals are really quite outstanding young people, and I think actually when we interviewed for those apprentices, if we'd have been able to, I'd have taken about 27 of them on. But clearly, you know, this is a route for us going forward, grow our own, and then to actually develop them so that they have a career and they understand that they have that career progression, both not necessarily with the Knots Fund, but although we would like to continue to keep them, but obviously if we were able to retain them across the LGPS landscape, that would also be of benefit. The Knots Fund also benefits from support of the other teams within the Business Services Centre, such as the Business Hub, the Systems team, the Payroll function, and the Accounting team. I think we have to consider our approach to resourcing going forward. And this year we took an opportunity to actually utilise the Council's Customer Service Centre in the support of the issuing of benefit statements. So this year all calls to our dedicated pension number from a benefits perspective were filtered up to the Customer Service Centre. So on average, for every 100 calls, the customer service centre are able to handle 25 calls, which mean obviously we're creating capacity back within our team. We're looking to continue to expand that service that the customer service centre provide for us so that they would answer all the calls initially and being able to address things such as change of name and address, verification of personal details, thereby releasing our skilled resource within the pension office to consolidate their activity on pension-specific work. Within the report, you'll see that I have detailed the SITFA benchmarking statistics, which provide us with a cost per member and also an average across the other 14 funds that submit a return. The SITFA benchmarking return, you'll see, provides a cost per member for the Nottinghamshire Fund of £16.65 against an average of just over £22. Also detailed in those paragraphs of the report are the lowest cost per member, which is being reported by Oxford, of £7.63, and the highest from Southwark being reported as £142.11. I think it's fair to say we should take these statistics with a pinch of salt. There's now only 14 LGPS funds that are submitting a return. I think it's very difficult we don't understand, we don't have the detail of all the figures that they submit. So we will keep this under review and determine in future years whether this is something we want to continue to submit to. Data quality, I've spoken at endless pension committee meetings that data quality is the foundation of all the work that we undertake at within the administration team. Whilst the statistics within the report show a fairly static position over the last 2 years, I think it's important to set that in the context of the McLeod work and the data collections that we've undertaken there, which are continuing to being loaded into the system. So as yet, we've not benefited from that additional data in those measures. You'll also see from the report that the membership of the Nottinghamshire Fund continues to increase across all categories, with our total membership now being in excess of 160,000 members. Again, with scheme employers, we see an increase from figures reported last year of 545 through to 566. Given sort of like that context of the scale of our membership, the complaints that we're reporting that have come through the formal IDRP process continue to remain small in number, although they are often fairly complex cases. The year-end table shows again an increase in returns received by the deadline and a small increase in accuracy. However, you would note that there is still room for improvement. The report that we present today reports on the performance of the pensions admin team. However, what we don't do is actually report in any great detail about the performance of our scheme employers. And therefore, I've asked the Employer Support and Compliance team to undertake a review of our administration strategy in the final quarter of this year. I think it's important that we're able to demonstrate to both the Pensions Committee and the Pensions Board on the issues that we are having with scheme employers, and that we develop a set of KPIs to report on their performance and to hopefully get the buy-in from both committee and board to support where we may wish to ask employers to comment on their own performance going forward. Performance data presented in the report is shown in a series of tables. You'll see that there's been an increase in the number of processes completed over this last financial year of just under 10%. I would expect to see a significant increase in the number of processes that we complete when we report next year, as we've undertaken quite extensive work to automate a number of our processes. So we've automated our levers and our refund process. Working with our provider Civica, this work has meant that what we've done is we've stepped back and we've had a look at what do we do as pension officers to complete these processes? How can we use the technology to actually automate the process? So, for example, if we were to do a levers process manually, it takes approximately 40 minutes to do an end-to-end process, and it involves 2 officers. Where we've automated that process and we have all the data available to us, currently it's taking less than 6 minutes to process a lever, and it involves 1 officer. That's because the process undertakes a series of data validation checks. If that data is all there and the system is expecting certain data to be in certain fields, so it measures the thresholds of that data, it will pass it all the way through the process to then generating the letter out at the end of the process. If there are aspects of data that are missing because they've not come in from a scheme employer, what happens through the process, it pushes it out to a specific work tray, which then means we can engage with the Employer Support and Compliance team, who are interface into the scheme employer to chase that missing data. We've also done some work with other funds, specifically Cheshire and the Local Pension Partnership, where we are looking to share the processes that we have developed and in return receive the automated process that they have developed, therefore sharing that knowledge and that expense across LGPS funds. We also see that there's been an increase in the number of processes that are meeting the KPIs. This is just under 11% increase. The fund continues to see an increase in requests from deferred beneficiaries who are over age 55. I think this is in direct relationship to the cost of living crisis. Analysis of this information has made us have a look at what is the actual benefit statement that we send out to our deferred beneficiaries. So currently what we do is we report what their benefits would be as payable at age 55 and what those benefits would be at state pension age. And if you take your benefits early, obviously you receive a degree of actuarial reduction. But actually, when you look at the difference between years, say 55, 56, 56 to 57, the reduction may only be a few £100s, and therefore the member may decide that it's more beneficial to put that into payment earlier. I think looking at what currently happens with our deferred benefit statements, because we only provide them with the data at 55 and state pension age, it generates a lot of traffic into the pension administration team where people are then asking for quotes. So our plan from June 25 is on the deferred benefit statement to provide members with that pension benefit payable figure from 55, 56, 57 all the way through to their state pension age. This then should reduce the traffic for quotes and actually just move us more to doing or doing the actual retirement. So I think, you know, that there's going to be a real payoff to us there. Deaths. The table demonstrates a significant reduction following COVID. However, analysis of the deaths experienced over the last year showed there is a significant number of members who are passing away between the age of 30 and 55. We think that this is mainly to do with where people may now be being diagnosed with conditions such as cancer, where that diagnosis has been delayed as a result of COVID. There are some extremely sad cases of members passing away. One case I looked at yesterday, a young lady passing away at the age of 31. The complexity of paying death grants is ever increasing due to the fairly complex blended family arrangements that members have these days. And often it takes a considerable amount of time for us to engage with a number of potential beneficiaries who may have a claim on the death grant. There's one particular case where actually we're going to engage the services of a genealogy company to attempt to find the parents of the member who we believe are still alive, where we're actually being pressed to pay out the death grant by an individual who may have been or may not have been in a relationship with the member, but we feel it's important that we must cast that net wider to ensure that we've considered all potential beneficiaries. We're currently working to review the KPIs that are currently shown in the report to expand the items that we report in the future in line with the scheme advisory annual report KPI guidance. That concludes this year's admin performance report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for that very, very comprehensive report, and some of the nuances that you've explained are quite interesting. Sorry about the deaths that we seem to be experiencing. But can just, before I open it up for question comment, just pass on our thanks as a committee for the work your team do. My comment really is, question is, are you happy that the transformation work you're doing is going to deliver some of those benefits you've explained in terms of performance, cost, that sort of stuff, or it's still on track?
That's a very interesting question, Councillor Kerry. I think that it's about getting the right balance between that transformational change and delivering the business as usual. I think obviously bringing in the apprentices and also considering how we use the other, shall we say, support teams that are available through the council, such as the customer service centre, I think enables us to create capacity to look to continue to progress that work. I think it's fair to say that it's also about managing the team and how people perceive change as well, that this is not a threat to their roles, but this is more around using technology such as automation, such as AI, to take away the more basic tasks that are repetitive and can be done using machine learning, that type of thing, and to release the capacity within the team to deal with the more complex cases, such as the deaths, such as members such as myself and Nigel that may have membership over a plethora of regulations when we come to calculating our own retirement benefits sometime in the future, I'm hoping.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Any questions, comments from members? Yes, Chris, Councillor Bonfather.
I never thought I'd hear these words coming out of my mouth. But that was a fascinating and interesting report, an admin performance report that I was riveted with. No, seriously, Sarah, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the report. But the presentation, which obviously put some flesh on the bones, was really, really interesting. And I thank you for that level of detail, really. And I think it just brings home to us we're not just dealing with pounds, shillings, and pence here, facts and figures. We're dealing with people, people's lives, which is really important. Just one question, really, in terms of the employer's accountability and liability. So when they fail to submit their returns at all, or they submit them where they are demonstrably wrong rather than a simple mistake, which is obviously then taking our officers' time in either chasing them up or having to correct them on multiple occasions sometimes. What accountability have the employers got? What can we do? What penalties are there effectively? Can we fine them? Can we kick them out of the scheme? If they're a small employee with a limited number of employees, the benefits they bring to the scheme may be far outweighed by the administration costs and implications for us. So I just wondered if you can answer that.
So from a year-end perspective, yes, we do find them. I think we, in my sort of view, we probably pussyfoot around it a little bit too much. That's why I think it is important that we start to report into committee and board, because I think we need the weight of the board and the committee behind us to start to really press home to scheme employers their responsibilities. Obviously, our ultimate, sanction is that we can report them to the regulator for a breach of their responsibility. But I think, again, this has got to be set in some balance, and I think when we look at the role of the employer support and compliance team, my vision for that team going forward is that actually we start to use that team more in an account management style, so that they're engaging much more on a one-to-one basis with that scheme employer. We are doing some of that, but I think we need to have a look at how we ramp that up. And I think the starting point for that is reviewing the admin strategy, which obviously we will then come out to consult with employers. We will set that context about why we're doing that, what the benefits are both to the employer and to the admin team, but ultimately to the fund, because you're the point that you make there is a cost to all of this. There's a cost to not delivering what you are responsible for delivering at the time you're responsible for delivering it. But I think we can't just jump straight in there. I think there's some building blocks, but I think that's going to come out over time. Certainly there are a couple of employers where they are, shall we say, are persistent offenders. One may be the employer you used to work for, Councillor Barnfather, many years ago. But, and again, it may well be that we are able to use specific members of committee and board with their connections to help address those points. But whether the committee or the board would feel ultimately they would call an employer in and speak to them, I think that would be something we would need to discuss. But I think also, I think we need to see what other funds are doing and how they're approaching it, so that we're in line with other funds as well.
Councillor Sullington.
Thank you, Chairman. It's really just a comment. I agree totally with what Councillor Barnfather has just said. I think your presentation brought alive, even though we were talking about death, but brought alive paperwork that's in black and white and made it suddenly become people, make it suddenly become something that I think we were all engaged in, which, when you're looking at this committee, is often percentages and numbers. and to have that briefing was excellent. Thank you.
Okay, we now move on to. It was a noting report. There's no need to vote on the item. Okay, moving on to item number 5, Ministry of Housing, Communities, Local Government consultation. So before I hand over to Tamsin to introduce report, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 29.
I'll second it, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Tamsin, would you take us through this very interesting report?
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware of the MHCLG consultation on LGPS pooling, local government and governance of funds and pools, as a link to this was circulated to committee members. Some of the proposals have significant implications for the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund and Committee and other LGPS funds. Some of the key implications are outlined in the report, but this is a complex area and discussions are continuing with LGPS Central, partner funds, MHCLG and across the LGPS and associated organisations. Views of members are welcomed on these questions and any other matter relevant to the consultation, either during today's committee or by email. It is proposed to agree a response with the Section 151 officer and the chair of the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee for submission by the consultation deadline on 16th of January. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tamsin. I'd like to open up to any questions or comments and indications. Councillor Waters, Lee.
You were looking in my direction. I do have some quite serious issues, especially where there's talks of we can't make particular choices. For example, we have quite a high allocation to UK equity, where a pooling approach, it might just be listed securities, so it really tones down what ability we do have to invest. I have actually put together a response last night, which I'll email over to you after this meeting, I guess. I do have serious reservations about any proposals that could compromise the independence of the pension funds. Pension funds must prioritise the long-term interests of their members, ensuring their financial security in retirement. Introducing centralised or external controls risks exposing those funds to undue political or financial pressures that may not align with these goals. Moreover, independent management enables pension funds to tailor investment strategies to their unique liabilities and membership demographics, as I think our last report has demonstrated. The flexibility is vital for maintaining financial resilience and delivering strong returns. Centralising or limiting independence could stifle innovation in investment approaches, particularly regarding our sustainable investment strategy or regional focused investments, which would better serve local communities and their members. The proposals also strip local authorities of their ability to manage funds in a way that reflects their members' best interest. This is a fundamental breach of the principles that those closest to the scheme members are the best placed to act on their behalf. There is little compelling evidence that mandatory pooling delivers better outcomes. Cost savings achieved through pooling have been minimal in some cases and have been offset by higher governance and administrative costs. Pooling risks creating a centralised, homogenised approach to investments that prioritise cost cutting over innovation, diversification and long-term returns. This could lead to suboptimal outcomes for scheme members. The proposals for pooling outlined in Chapter 2 represent an overreach that undermine local accountability. It erodes the fiduciary duties of the administrating authorities and risks long-term harm to fund performance. The rationale for mandatory pooling and the prescribed measure proposed is unconvincing, and it lacks robust evidence to justify such sweeping changes. I just finished, Chairman, on the proposals in Chapter 4 reflect an overreach in the governance of administrating authorities and pools. They risk burdening authorities with unnecessary bureaucracy, escalating costs, diluting local autonomy, all without clear evidence that these changes will improve outcomes for scheme members. The focus should remain on delivering strong investment returns, cost efficiencies, rather than laying governance requirements that add extra complexity without value. And as I said, I'll email over a full response.
I don't think there's a question in there. Thank you very much for your feedback. Very, very useful, and we will obviously take that into consideration when we proceed. Councillor Creamy, I think you indicated.
Yeah, just a question on the proposed 14 onwards about training. It does say there that training, the FO training will be increased due to this. But I'm just wondering, will it become like the planning committee where it'll be quasi-judicial, which means you have to have training before you vote? And also with the extended training, does that mean we will have to have subs make sure they're trained before they come and sub it? Again, the same as planning. So I'm just wondering what this would lead to when it actually comes to representation on the committee if there's somebody subbing. So I'm saying that myself as I tend to sub on this committee. So you would have to have particularly a named sub, because if they miss on the training, otherwise you have to train every single councillor all the time. So I'm just wondering about the training.
Do you want to come back on that? We've discussed this a lot in the background, I can assure you.
And I don't think at the moment there is a definitive black and white answer to that. Though you're very welcome to attend the training if you'd like to.
It's just talking about my version. Just if it's that prescriptive when it actually comes in, there will be an element of people saying, "Well, you haven't been trained, therefore you can't vote," even if it's not in the legislation. There will be that expectation.
Thank you, Councillor Purdy-Horan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just an admin point. I'm sure all the members of this committee will know the answer to this, but just for the benefit of scheme members who read this report and members of the public, the term AAs is regularly used throughout the report, and in section 4, proposal 6, the term CAs, MCAs, and CCAs won't be clear. Thank you.
Yeah, my apologies for that. I should have sent it to Jo for proofreading. I'm sure she'd have picked it up. And I'm not sure I could have translated all of the MCCA things myself.
Shall I say that obviously the AA refers to administering authorities, but the CAs, MCAs and CCAs are all around combined authorities and the different versions of combined authorities that exist.
Thank you, Councillor Barnford.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Probably for the first time in this chamber, I find myself in total agreement with Councillor Waters, which is quite a unique situation to find myself in. I absolutely agree with everything, Lee, that you had to say. I think this is absolute government overreach. It'll come as no surprise to people who've heard me speak before. I was against LGPS pooling. I'm massively against what is being proposed by the government. And it's quite interesting, actually, if you cross-reference the report that we're currently considering and you go to the independent advisors report in paragraph 2, the Chancellor relaxed her fiscal rules slightly to allow more borrowing. One change has been to include LGPS assets and liabilities into the government's assets on which the calculations are done. Perhaps when we get to that, or maybe even now, William, it'd be interesting just for a bit of clarification on that point, because it's almost, it seems to me, we're saying that the Chancellor can rely on the value of LGPS funds to be able to borrow more money. So she counts our funds as her money in the bank, on which she can then effectively take out a mortgage, which would of course explain why the government is so keen to centralise the funds and remove any sort of local control, which would effectively, if these proposals are followed through, we won't be meeting, this committee will be totally redundant. We will have an officer, no disrespect to officers, because you manage this fund on our behalf, but we are the oversight board who set the strategies and policies by which you operate, and our role will become entirely redundant, as I see it, as elected members.
Do you want to come back, William, on that one? Do it now, then yes.
I mean, there is so much in this consultation proposal and so much to say. I mean, your description of the decision to put assets onto the government's balance sheet is correct. She is doing it so that she can borrow more money. There's a little nuance there that if the value of those assets were to fall, she would then not be able to borrow as much money, and she might use that as a reason for de-risking the way those assets are managed, much as the DB schemes have over the past 30 years. And of course, if that happens, then contributions have to bear more of the burden, and it's going to be almost certainly rise. Did you want to come back? I've got more to say about the consultation generally. Do you want to come back on that?
It just seems ironic that the local government pension scheme is one of the few government schemes, pension schemes, if you like, which is a funded scheme. And at the moment, from the last actuaries report, we are a fully funded scheme. And it's ironic considering that most government pensions are totally unfunded and are paid by the next generation of taxpayers. So we're almost being penalised for doing so well.
I mean, the truth of it is this, is, as Councillor Waters said, the outcomes for pensioners will almost certainly be no better and could potentially be quite a lot worse, whether you look at costs or whether you look at returns. It's pretty clear that government is doing this because the government needs the money to invest in their private, to invest in the infrastructure and other projects which they wish to kind of start in the UK, and they're doing that because they need the growth to get the tax revenue to keep their fiscal arithmetic afloat, and that's the kind of underlying driver behind it. But however much we complain about it, they've got a very big majority in government, and these proposals are going to go through, maybe not exactly as the consultation document, but very, very similar. So I think we as a fund have to work on the basis that they're going to go through. One of the problems is the timescale. It's a very short timescale, which means we really have to start, officers have to start working now to make it work. I think there are a couple of other little issues I will bring up while we're on the subject. One is proposals on local investment are really hard to make work. The government is suggesting that the combined authorities will feed through ideas to Townsend, who will then feed them through to the pool, who will do due diligence, and money will come in. Trouble is that actually what you need is lots of supply of ideas coming through. The fact that we've got the money does not mean it's going to happen. What you need is the ideas and the local opportunities coming through, and that requires a whole different set of policies. The second thing is just conflicts of interest, and the way this has been set up, there are undoubted conflicts of interest at the pool level, and we're going to have to be really careful how we and other partner funds oversee that. Just final point I'll make is that in terms of responding to the consultation, we've kind of got three choices, and somebody described it as there's a spectrum between compliant and defiant. And one choice is to be compliant. We are turkeys voting for Christmas, just agree with most of it because it's going to happen. You know, the other end of it is to think this is all horribly wrong, as I think we think, and to kind of just really go back on the consultation and say we disagree with a lot of this and give our reasons. I don't think that's going to be very effective, though. I think we'll do better to take the third road, which is to pick our battles and decide what we really care about, and in the response we give back to make sure that those are the ones we focus on. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you very much, William. Tamsin, do you want to come up? You have been working with William, part of the process. We have just been sitting in our little box. We've been talking together to try and get the right result.
We have the implications of these proposals are extremely complex. They have massive implications for the pool as well. We've been working with LGPS Central and with partner funds, and at every meeting we attend, and we've put in a lot of extra meetings, somebody will ask a little question and it uncovers a whole big area of complexity that somehow or other, if this goes through as proposed, we're going to have to find a way of solving it. So I think it's fair to say that a lot of work is going on. There is a lot more to do. We don't have all the solutions. Central doesn't have all the solutions. What we're seeking to do in response to the consultation is at least to flag up the key areas that are going to cause issues both for us and for other funds within the LGPS, because I think it's important that if the government go forward with this, that they understand the risks and the challenges. And can I also respond to one of Councillor Barnfather's comments, in that I think on an ongoing basis we might not be making all of the individual investment strategy decisions in the way that the committee is used to, but there will still be the entirety of pensions administration which will not be affected by these proposals at all, and we will still need to scrutinise and hold to account the pool, which will have a much bigger role, and I think that will still provide the pension fund committee with plenty to do.
If I may, effectively we become subservient to the pool rather than the masters of the pool. That to me is the change here.
That's true from the point of view of a lot of the investment strategy decisions. However, we are still the shareholders. The pool is our company, and we will need to ensure that they are delivering for our members.
I think this is very complicated. We do not yet know where we're going. All points mentioned are valid, and particularly the one William said. I think the ultimate, if it doesn't work, the ultimate cost will be on the back of the people out there that we're serving, and I think that is the most dangerous part of this whole exercise. I don't want to be political. We've never really been political in here, but that is a risk, and I am nervous about that, certainly for our pensioners. So I think if we can leave it there, I haven't seen any of the indications at this stage, but we will carry on to work together to finalise this so that we get the right message. As William said, I think we need to get government to understand what the risks are. I'm not sure they currently understand what those risks are, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you. Okay, we have moved the recommendation that we've worked together to put this out. Can I have a vote in favour, please, of that recommendation? All those in favour? Show of hands. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Move on to item number 6, which is the working party that we had a few weeks ago, on the local property investment fund. Before I hand over to Tamsin, there is a recommendation on page 34. I will move that.
I'll second it, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Tamsin, would you take us through the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The Pension Fund Committee held a working party on the 14th of November to discuss the fund's local property investment fund. The Local Property Investment Fund was established in 2014 with the focus on investment in Nottinghamshire. This was created to deliver a risk-return profile in line with the main portfolio from assets within Nottinghamshire. 10 years later, it's appropriate to review whether the local fund has delivered on its objectives. Aberdeen provided a presentation identifying the key issues. The local fund has a significantly increased concentration risk due to its size, which does not enable sufficient diversification. This can cause breaches of investment risk limits where a single asset or tenant can severely impact overall performance. Aberdeen advised that the lot size restricts investment into institutional stock and bars investments into certain sectors such as retail parks and the living sector. This may prevent investment in favoured sectors, which would impact performance. Assets of this type and size may have lower environmental, social and governance-based fundamentals and the capital expenditure required to meet future ESG regulation could be sizable. The smaller fund comes with a higher cost of management of smaller assets compared to fewer, larger lot sizes. There are many fixed costs which impact management efficiencies. The issues were discussed at the working party, and the challenges of managing the local fund were recognised. The working party agreed to recommend to committee that the local property investment fund is incorporated into the main fund. This would be a straightforward administrative task. The committee remains interested in investment in the local area, initially defined as the LGPS Central Region, and Aberdeen will be requested to report on the proportion of properties in the main fund held in this area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tamsin. It was a very well attended and good meeting. I just need to make a comment. On page 36, which is the attendees, Councillor Jackson was intending to be at that meeting, but he had to leave for medical reasons partway through the prior meeting near the end. So I think we should take that as an apology, but he did say he was leaving and had to go. Thank you. Any questions or comments, please? Councillor Waters.
Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't entirely convinced by the overall outcome of that working party meeting. I do actually like the nimbleness and the diversity of having that local fund where we do invest in Nottinghamshire assets. And if we were to move that local fund into a bigger overarching fund, we didn't agree that actually there would be a fixed percentage for Nottinghamshire. There was a broad benchmark of East Midlands, but it was a non-committal answer that I got when I asked those queries. Something did strike me as just a question. Would this small local fund, or even the property fund, would something hypothetically like a new county hall be able to be purchased by that fund to release monies, and then rental income from that would go into there? Or is that not an asset that that fund would consider? Do we know if that would be possible?
I'm sure we can buy any property asset that we think, but it's about the returns. And Aberdeen have a very good process in terms of identifying the kind of assets and risks associated with those assets and returns for us to consider. So, but we're not the only fund that they work with. We do get offered different ones. Tamsin, do you want to sort of add to that?
It would also depend on whether the asset's there to be sold, or not. Yeah. And in that particular case, I think the county council would require it to be sold, so the pension fund wouldn't have an opportunity.
The latter part of my question was a bit more facetious. I was throwing it out there.
I was trying to be polite.
Any more questions or comments, please? Councillor Barnfather.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I remember when we brought this in 2014, I was a member of the pension fund at that time, and there were some non-voting members of this committee, who unfortunately aren't present with us today, who were very strong advocates for this particular local property fund, which to me was almost the start of the slippery slope where we were going with the previous item, because this was basically saying we'll invest locally irrespective of whether that is the best use of our funds to generate income for our members. And that is ultimately what we are here for, to generate income for our members. It's very nice to invest locally if that is a solid and sound investment, but that shouldn't be the principal reason. And it goes back to why we're having the earlier discussion. It's so that we can invest in infrastructure nationally. Is that the best use of our members' funds to generate income for their future? So it was the start of that slippery slope. I think it's absolutely right. The experiment's been had. It didn't actually work. It didn't hurt us too much, but arguably it has cost the fund money.
Thank you, Councillor Barnfather, for those for reminding us of the origin of that. Councillor Purdy, you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And leading on from that comment from Councillor Barnfather, I think there was a feeling within the room that this committee should have some regard to local priorities. And I'm prepared to accept that the area covered by the central pool organisation can be sufficiently defined as local. I absolutely agree with flexibility and not to completely tie the hands of our fund managers. And I say this completely understanding that we have a duty to seek the best returns. But as a local government pension scheme, we do have choices that we have made, political choices or moral choices, however you want to describe them. For example, I don't think we directly invest in the armaments industry, and that probably would have the overwhelming support of our pension scheme members. So we don't pursue returns come what may. We do have a position on certain industries, and so the recommendations from the Working Party suggest that there is an addition to moving the local property fund into the main fund, line 15, to request that Aberdeen report on the proportion of properties in the main fund held within the local area. In this case, the amended central pool region. So, can I just ask, has that recommendation been carried over into recommendation 1 that's listed on page 34? Because I would like, for transparency, that emphasis, please.
My understanding is, yes, it's not clear in that recommendation. I don't see a problem with actually doing that as part, as amending the recommendation to reflect what Tamsin said in her introduction.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we need a committee decision in order to request that information from Aberdeen, but I will make sure it is provided. And if you want to amend the recommendation, I wouldn't have thought there was a problem with that. Can I also say one of the discussions we have had with Aberdeen in the past is, although their objective is to deliver returns to the members, which, as Councillor Barnfather has pointed out, is exactly what we are here for and they are here for our property portfolio. But we have spoken to them and they are aware that if two equivalent investment opportunities arise, we prefer a local investment. So they are aware of that.
Yeah, I think that was clear in the meeting. That question was asked clearly in the meeting. Okay, are there any other comments, questions? Okay, so I think I'm going to amend the recommendation to include the point about we'll be notified of the proportion on a regular basis. And on that case, ask for your show of hands as a approve the vote, please. Thank you, that's unanimous. Moving on to item number 7, it's the Climate Action Plan Progress Report. So before I hand over to Tamsin, recommendations on page 43. I'll move that.
I'll second it, Chairman.
Thank you. Tamsin, please take us through the report.
Thank you, Chair. The first climate risk report was reported to the Nottinghamshire County Council Pension Fund in October 2020 with a number of recommendations which became the fund's climate action plan. Since then, the plan has been reviewed and updated on receipt of the annual climate risk reports, and the committee has reviewed progress on a 6-monthly basis. The report shows the progress which has been made to the date of the report on these actions. All actions are progressing in line with the original plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tamsin. Simple report, but obviously reflects the good performance in everything being in line with the original plan. So I'll open that for any questions or comments. No, I see none. So the recommendation has been moved and seconded. That's on page 43. All those in favour, please. Any against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. It's carried. Okay, moving on to item number 8, Climate Risk Management Report and TF's Task Force for Climate Related Financial Disclosure (DCFD) report. The recommendation on page 48, and I'll move that.
I'll second it, Chairman.
Thank you, Sue. I may ask Tamsin to take us through the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Pension Fund received its 5th Climate Risk Report and received a training session from LGPS Central on the report to communicate the findings and recommendations of the Climate Risk Report and enable members to appreciate the challenge in obtaining reliable data for these calculations. Some modifications have been made to the Climate Risk Report this year and some new metrics introduced. LGPS Central has made a number of recommendations to incorporate into the Climate Action Plan. The report was based on investments held at 31st of March 2024. The report itself is provided formally to committee as an exempt appendix due to the commercial confidentiality of supplier intellectual property. The Pension Fund is also publishing a TCFD report which contains all the key elements of the report. Members are reminded that the analysis and figures in both reports are based on the available data. As this is dependent on what companies currently publish, it should be noted that the data is incomplete. The model requires a number of assumptions, and the information in the report should be interpreted in this context. Data is improving, partly due to pressure from engaged shareholders such as ourselves. But the sensitivity to assumptions needs to be appreciated in interpreting the results of this work. Despite this caveat, the analysis is supportive of the fund's current investment strategy, and that it shows that the year-end equity holdings continue to be below the market cap benchmark in terms of carbon footprint and weight of fossil fuel reserves, which indicates that the fund has been considering and managing climate risks. The fund's emissions intensity, as measured by financed emissions per £1 million invested, is trending positively, decreasing by 29% since 2019. The pension fund will continue to monitor and manage all financially material risks to which it's exposed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tamsin. And just to remind members that we were proactive in introducing this work into our programme a number of years ago now, and it's almost like work as usual. Another metrics on, yeah, right, they're not complete, a lot more work to do, but we are using the most up-to-date that we can, and therefore the most informed way of progressing in terms of this work. So are there any questions or comments from members, please? Okay, I see none. The recommendation has been moved and seconded. Can I ask for your support by show of hands, please? Any against? One abstention. That's carried. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to item number 9. Although we've mentioned it briefly a little earlier, William, I'd like to move before you introduce it. The recommendation, page 67. Seconder, please.
I will second it, Chairman.
Okay, over to you, William.
Good. Thank you very much, Chair. I don't have a huge amount to say today, to be honest. I'm going to talk a little bit about the US and bond yields. And the reason I'm going to do that is that for much of my career, which I'm afraid stretches over 40 years, bond yields have been falling and then are rising again. And that has a big impact on markets generally. We talked briefly earlier about the UK and the kind of fiscal arithmetic being quite difficult. America is in a much worse position because America is running a deficit of about 6 or 7% every year. And that means that the amount of debt which is growing is piling up. And particularly important is the fact that most of the debt which they're piling up is actually a result of debt service, i.e. the cost of financing their debt. And of course, the more debt you get, the more that cost goes up. So there becomes a point when it begins to rise exponentially. What that means is that bond yields should go up because there will be more gilts, more US treasuries being issued. Why does it matter to us? Because if that happens and the price goes up, i.e. the yield goes up, it's almost certain that we will follow because our bonds tend to follow US bonds. And it matters. The second reason it matters is that most of the way the financial world works, when you're trying to value a long-term asset, the core of everything is yields. And if yields go higher, the valuation goes down. And that's why I suspect that we're kind of reached the peak after over 40 years of generally rising equity markets. We're getting to the period when it's going to be much, much more difficult. Now, I mean, I always say to you, the fund is diversified and is therefore protected. And it's true in the long term, it is generally protected. I think it's also true to say, I'm not saying don't invest in equities because they are growing assets, whereas nothing else is. But I am saying just it's going to be much more difficult going forward. That's really all I wanted to say today. I mean, we talked about the consultation. I could talk for at least an hour on that, but the chair would not thank me if I did.
Thank you very much, William. And you paint, what's the word? I can't think of it. A dangerous scenario, really, in long term in those markets, particularly where, as those yields rise, because they need to fund the debt, also there's a risk of default. And I'm not sure that default would be allowed to happen, but the other consequences of that is finding that money from somewhere. So that would have another impact on global economies. So very interesting what you just said.
If I can just come back on that, I think you're quite right to say that it's quite likely there will be some form of default from a Western government at some point. But default can take many, many forms. It doesn't necessarily mean not paying your things. Even today, the Federal Reserve is repressing yields. What they're doing is they're financing much more very short term. And the wrinkle there is that if you finance on a 1-year Treasury bill, it doesn't count as your kind of debt financing, because what you do is you issue it at 95 and you buy it back at 100. Whereas if you issue a bond and you have to pay 5% yield every year, it does count. So there's all sorts of ways you can default, but you're quite right. I suspect that we're going to see Western governments doing that.
Any question, comments from us? Chris, Councillor Barnard.
Yeah, thank you, William. So in Germany, the coalition is collapsing. In France, the government have just lost a vote of no confidence, and the government effectively is in dire straits. I think France is also something like 6 or 7% debt ratio to income. I think we're about 2, aren't we, if I've got that right? So, bearing in mind that Europe is a Franco-German axis primarily, that's always been the powerhouse of the European Union, based on German industry, which is collapsing because of their reliance on Russian fuel supplies. When it all goes pear-shaped in Europe in the next 6 months, which it looks like it's going to do, what's likely to be the impact on our market here, direct impact on our market here?
When you say the market, do you mean the stock market or? Yeah, I mean.
Yes, sorry, equities, yes.
Yes, I mean, and we haven't even talked about protectionism and tariffs. Clearly, there is potential for negative impact, but it will be very equity specific, and if you are not importing or exporting, you're not so affected. If, for example, you are an energy company, again, you're probably not so affected. So it will be very stock specific, but I find it hard to believe that. And also, I suppose, when you get problems, you also get opportunities. And some companies will be able to take advantage of them. So I wouldn't want to over-exaggerate the impact of what's going on there. But it's something I think everybody has to be aware of. And I guess it's more risk.
Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chairman. With the recent election of Donald Trump, what do you think the market impacts will be with Russia? Will sanctions tighten? Will they loosen? This fund does have assets which are zero and suspended. Also, what do we think the impact of the tariffs will be on our global assets, and even the Doge or Department of Government, whatever it is that Elon Musk is doing, and what it's going to do to treasury bills?
I mean, it's a very good question. My view is that so far, equity markets have looked at the positives of a Trump administration, and were possibly slightly surprised to see he had such a strong mandate, i.e. lower energy costs, lower taxation, lower regulation. But they have not looked at the negatives, and the principal negative is protectionism and tariffs. If you saw tariffs coming in, the kind of at the worst end of the scale, it would be a very significant negative impact on world markets. And if you want, I see the evidence for that, just go back to the 1930s and what happened then. It has to be very negative. I don't think he will be able to implement everything he has talked about, but I could be wrong about that. So I'm not suggesting we're going to have a worst case scenario, but I do think markets have been turned a bit of a blind eye as to what might happen on that front. Does that answer your question?
Mostly, what do you think about the Russia situation? Are sanctions likely to tighten, or do you think they're relaxed?
And Trump says he's going to, to do something about it, to try and end the war the war going on there. If he does, it will have a slight positive impact on US finances. There's going to be a huge rebuilding needed in Ukraine. So I can see some positives going on there, but the question really is whether he can or not. And it's very hard to predict with any certainty what's going to happen, I'm afraid. Certainly, I don't feel I'm qualified to do it.
Okay, I see no other indications. I think the recommendations are noting, so we will note that report. Thank you. Moving on to item number 10, which is the work programme. We've set out our recommendation on page 72. I'll formally move that. Thank you. Can I ask Tammy to go through it, please? And I think particular reference to the comment we've had recently that the meetings in April might be suspended, whatever the word is. Thank you.
That's very hot off the press. Yes, thank you, Chair. In the appendix, you can see the work programme for the rest of the committee meetings of the current cycle. It looks as though the April committee meeting will be cancelled and the items on the work programme for April will probably move to the July meeting. As I say, this is a very recent likelihood, so we've not done the detail on that, but obviously the investment meetings always tend to be pretty full, so they'll probably move to July. The committee is asked to identify any additional reports required. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tamsin. Would any members like to indicate any additional items to the work programme? No, I see not. So we've moved our recommendation to approve the work programme. All those in favour, please show of hands. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item number 11 is this module papers called the Risk Management Strategy and Pension Fund Risk Register. The recommendation on page 81. I'll move that. Have a seconder, please. Excuse me. Sarah, would you take us through the report, please?
Thank you, Councillor Kerry. This report is about risk management strategy and the pension fund risk register. I suppose I carry a risk here in making this not as engaging as the admin performance report. However, the purpose of the report presents a revised risk management strategy for approval, which is attached to Appendix A. It sets out the ongoing reporting arrangements to ensure members stay informed about the risks identified by the fund and how it manages them. It also updates members of the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee on the recent review of the Risk Register and provides a chance for the committee to review the updated version. This will be presented in the exempt part of the meeting. I'm sure we would all agree that risk management is a key element of the fund's overall framework of internal control and its approach for good governance. The risk management strategy sets out fund's risk appetite and how it will manage risks that have been identified. So risks, we identify the risk, we assess the risk for likelihood and impact, we identify mitigating controls, we assign or allocate either an individual or a service area to be responsible for those controls, and we maintain a risk register. The draft strategy, as I said, is attached to Appendix A. From the previously approved version, the following changes are proposed. We propose to adjust the focus of the strategy from general narrative about responsibilities to move to a framework of responsibility in terms of managing risk, and the changes also reflect the recently approved Regulators General Code of Practice, which we presented at this committee previously. Also, the additional funds, the additions of the funds aims in respect of risk management and setting out how the fund identifies and analyses risks. Previously, we have published the full risk register into the public domain. Working with Zurich to review the risk register, we've also discussed that having published that, it clearly makes us sensitive to having that information exposed in the public domain, and therefore proposals going forward will be that the detail of the risk register to protect the integrity of our service and reduce threat will come as an exempt item to committee. So both the investment and the admin parties of the fund have worked with Zurich to review the risk strategy or the risk register. An example of the template for a deep dive risk going forward is attached to Appendix B. We've split the risk register into 3 or 4 areas. So strategic risks, those risks that cross 2 or more of the 3 categories: investment specific risks, pensions administration risks, and governance risks. However, at present we haven't identified any specific risk. We've worked with Matt Hardwick at Zurich, who I'm sure committee will remember delivered some specific risk training several months ago to help us in really undertaking a review, and Matt will be joining the committee in the February meeting to present around our risk assessment and enable the committee to ask any more questions. We have also taken into account the Regulators' new Code of Practice in our review. The following risks were removed from the risk register and are now going to be managed on an ongoing business as usual basis. That is, fund cash is insufficient to meet current obligations, failure to communicate adequately with all relevant stakeholders, standing data and permanent records are not accurate, and inadequate controls to safeguard pension fund assets. We've added new risks to our risk register around changes in legislation, continued high inflation, cyber, and again committee will be aware that we're doing a specific piece of work with Aon around cyber, and they have also delivered training to the working group, and will also be attending the February committee meeting where we're presenting the cyber security strategy, hygiene guidelines, and our incident response plan. Some risks that were listed on the fund's previous version of the risk register have now been developed to better reflect current challenges and the outcomes to be presented, and they're detailed at paragraph 14. So from a reporting perspective, having reviewed the risk register, we've given consideration the discussions taken place around the most effective way to engage members to review the risk register. So it's proposed that on an annual basis there'll be a full review by committee of the risk register, and that the committee will receive reports on risk register at non-investment meetings. Here, these reports will highlight any key changes since the last update, but also provide the committee members with an opportunity to deep dive into 1 or 2 specific risks. This opportunity will also be given to the local pension board. To demonstrate how a deep dive will operate, at the February meeting we'll be presenting an example of this by using the cyber risk as our example to show you how that deep dive would operate, and how then you may wish to look at the full register and elect one or two risks that you would like us to undertake a deep dive on going forward. So recommendations in this report are to approve the updated risk management strategy and to note the cyber risk deep dive scheduled for the February 2025 committee meeting.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I think it's fair to say that this is still a little bit of work in progress. We've got obviously the meeting coming up in February, so we're not there yet. There's a lot more digging and diving to do, so the members will appreciate that. Any questions, comments from members on this part of the meeting, please? Okay, I see none. So may I have a show of hands? All those in favour of the strategy, please. That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, item number 12 is fund valuation and performance report for the second quarter. The recommendations on page 99. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Sue. Tamsin, would you take us through the open report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This report is to inform the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee of the value of the pension fund at the end of the latest quarter and provide information on the performance of the fund. The table in paragraph 3 shows the valuation at the end of September, at the end of June, and the value a year ago. The fund investments have increased by 222 million, which is 3.1% since the previous quarter. Paragraph 6 shows a more detailed analysis of valuations by portfolio, and paragraph 8 shows the first 6 months figures for 24-25 and unaudited figures for last year. Paragraphs 9 to 20 relate to the fund's holdings in fossil fuel companies and investments in sustainable equities and renewable energy. At the end of June, we had an estimated investment of 207 million in fossil fuel companies, which is 2.9% of the fund, and sustainable and renewable energy investments amounting to 912 million, or 12.8% of the fund. Members are reminded that a more thorough assessment of our exposure to fossil fuels through our equity investments is provided in LGPS Central's carbon risk analysis. The remainder of the report provides additional information on each of the fund's portfolios and the fund's responsible investment activity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tamsin. I'm just surprised to calculate that the difference between September this year and last year is about almost 14% increase in valuation. That's very interesting, isn't it? Okay, any questions or comments from members, please, on the open report? No, I see none. Thank you. The recommendation has been moved and seconded. No further action. So, all those in favour, please. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. I now move up to the exclusion of the public, item number 13 on the agenda. So we now move to the part of the agenda that proposes we meet in closed session to consider the exempt information in agenda item 16, etc. I therefore, agenda item 14 to 16, and I therefore invite the committee to resolve that the public be excluded for the remainder of the meeting on the grounds that the discussions are likely to involve the disclosure of exempt information as described in Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, and that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. May I see all those in favour? Have a seconder first, please. Thank you very much. And may I have a show of hands, please? All those for the exclusion. That's carried. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you very much, anybody who's been watching online. I hope you enjoyed our meeting this morning. Thank you.